Hello YouTube, Pharaoh with you once again, and I just came back from my most recent meeting with the Mormons. Today we had the big wig as well as the two other Mormon missionaries that I've been dealing with for this time period. I'll just call them missionary number one, missionary number two. They went over some talking points about faith and feeling inside. It was mostly a bunch of emotional appeals that just had no effect on me whatsoever. And then we got down to core evidences of the Mormon faith being true. And so this is where the bigwig came in, and we started swapping arguments over evidence. And every evidence that he would bring forth, I would demolish with facts. And so he pretty much had three different answers. Either was, I don't know yet. He would come up with some other explanation like look at this or review this or investigate this, and I'd say okay, I'm going to go do that. He brought with him a VHS tape that is a video about a bunch of ruins down in Latin America, and somehow this is evidence for the Mormon Church and all this stuff. So I'm going to review that tape at some point, but it's VHS and I don't have a VCR, so I'm going to have to figure out how to copy it onto a DVD or something to that nature. And the third thing is that he either it didn't affect him, like he just brushed off the argument, or he made an emotional appeal to faith or something to that measure, and that's how he knows that it's true. And that lasted for about 90 minutes, so a good hour and a half we're doing arguments for evidence. And Mr. Bigwig then has another appointment that he has to go do, and he left, and I thought this was the end of the meeting, and it's like, okay, I was getting ready to go, but the Mormons stuck around a bit, and they started asking me some questions about why I believe what I believe, what's my position on this, and surprisingly enough, they were really enthralled with what I had to say. We touched on philosophy, psychology, different perspectives of looking at things, and missionary number two kind of got really defensive. She was kind of offended and put off a little bit that there was this position that there is no God and there's a rational explanation for everything that there is in the world, and it doesn't require a supernatural being. And I think she did that mainly out of fear. I call it clinging. Sometimes when you talk to religious people, they cling to their faith because it's all they know. It's very important. They're very emotionally attached to their religion, and that's fine. They can cling to that all they want. I don't really care what you believe, but you can't state it as true if it's not proven. Missionary number one, on the other hand, was really enthralled with what I had to say and found it all very fascinating. And I could see the gears turning in her head. I actually got her to think like an atheist for at least a moment or two. But then she would retort to something in her faith that explained it away, but she would stop halfway through and she'd kind of look down and she'd be like, I'm not making any sense right now. So missionary number one seems to be getting the concepts that I am putting forth that I hold in my atheism. Missionary number two got extremely defensive at my remarks. So that's what went down with them. We went over a lot of different talking points. 3 hours I was talking about evidence and points of view and perspectives and concepts. The evidence itself, I showed them, does not prove their faith, or their religion, I should say. They may experience something in their religion that causes them to believe it, but it's not true in a provable sense. It's just all about how they feel about it personally. It's their own feelings, their own opinions. An opinion is not fact. When it came down to philosophy and things of that nature, missionary number one was accepting the ideas. Missionary number two scoffed at them. So, I mean, we went in all sorts of things like personal accountability. You know, like sometimes people say they do bad things and blame the devil on it, and I got them to realize how absurd that is. And we talked about why people do good things and how you don't need a God to be a good person. That you're born with morality. It's not given to you by some outside force or entity. So there's that concept. And then we went into other truths and known proven facts. We started getting into the really heavy questions that their version was heavily indoctrinated on them because they were born into it. The really important questions in life, like why are we here? What is my purpose in life? They started asking those questions. They want to know my answers to those, and my answers are very scientific. Why are we here? And I explained how the human race is a very complex organism that rode its way to the top because it had an evolutionary trump card that is intelligence. And we're basically the cream of the crop of all the organisms that have ever lived on the planet. And they came out with the fine-tuned argument, and I said, the universe isn't fine-tuned to you. You're fine-tuned to it. If you were born with an evolutionary trait where you didn't have lungs and you couldn't breathe oxygen, you'd be dead, and therefore you would not be the fittest and you would not survive. So just because the planet is so-called fine-tuned for you, it's not an argument for God. It's actually an argument saying that you are fine-tuned to your environment. So there was that aspect. Why are we here? The purpose of life, what's the meaning of life? That question. I explained very scientifically that there's only a couple reasons why you're here. Number one, your purpose is to be alive. Number two, your purpose is to breed and reproduce and make more humans. And maybe someday they'll evolve into something else. So there's that aspect. And then there's a third aspect, but that's just my opinion. I think you're supposed to have fun while you're alive. So I went into a great deal explaining all this stuff and about how life is finite, so it's more precious to me. And we talked about heaven and hell, and how heaven is this thing that people use because they're afraid of death. They're afraid of the end. And it's not palatable for them. So they construct this, because they have a creative mind, they construct this thing to where it just keeps going. You can't prove that it keeps going, but it's more palatable to you. It's your opinion that that's better. But it's not the truth, because it's not provable. It's just that you like it better. It tastes better. We talked about hell and how, hell wasn't in the Torah and hell was in New Testament. It was used as a control tool to make people believe the religion. It put fear in them to control people. That's what hell is. It's a fear tactic, and heaven is a reward tactic. Don't do this, bad things will happen. Do this, you'll go to heaven and party it up in paradise. And they really got that point, because I didn't really explain it in Christian terms. I just explained it in a psychological control type of terms. So there was that. A really long discussion, a lot of philosophy, a lot of philosophy. Psychoanalyzing why people do things for certain reasons. And missionary number one seemed very open and accepting of the concepts that I was presenting, which that I just hold. I'm not sure every atheist has the same concepts I do, but I put forth mine. And she was very accepting. Missionary number two, like I said, very defensive and didn't like it. It was like she was really afraid of there being no God. The idea was so foreign to her and so nasty and unappealing that she would rather believe that there is one, just so she didn't have the stress of the possibility of there not being one. So I don't know. I'll have to have another meeting, and maybe we'll have another one of these talks, and I can glean more insight from them. But missionary number one seems like the kind of person that could logically make the steps into removing faith or religion from their life and be comfortable with it. Missionary number two, it looks like if you were to take her religion away from her, she would have a mental breakdown. She would not know how to handle it. And that sometimes happens. And you know what? If she wants to keep her religion, that's fine with me. My purpose is not to convert her or any of them. I'm just explaining my viewpoint. I'm defending my position and why I think it's true. So there's that part. I want to thank everybody, Waffle Death especially, for helping me out and posing some questions and giving me evidence and stuff to ask. It really helped out, man. Thank you to all the people that helped and that were involved. I really appreciate it. Thanks for watching.
Y'all know the name. Pharaoh fucking Monk, ain't a damn thing changed.